Okay, right now we're going to head down to Philadelphia. National Transportation Safety Board giving its briefing. We have learned so far they've interviewed crew members and the engineer of the train today. Let's listen.
Sound his bell as he goes through past the station stop, and he did that. He recalled doing that, but he has no recollection of anything past that. He felt fully qualified and comfortable with his equipment, and he reported no problems with his train handling. And when asked, he demonstrated a very good knowledge of very good working knowledge of the territory, speed limitations, things like that. He began his railroad career while he was in college as a brakeman. He started with Amtrak in 2006 as a conductor, and in 2010 he became a locomotive engineer. Since 2012 he has worked out of New York City, and he's been on this particular job for several weeks. He works it 5 days a week. It's an out and back trip for him. Goes New York, Washington, and back to New York 5 days a week. He said that he did not feel fatigued, nor did he report any illness. As we reported the other day, the train has 3 conductors. The conductor is not able to be interviewed as he is still in the hospital. However, we did interview the 2 assistant conductors. I'll call it assistant conductor number 1. She's 39 years old. She was hired by Amtrak in 2011. And she was in the 4th car, which is the cafe car. She stated that before departing Washington, the entire crew conducted a safety briefing where they went over all of the speed restrictions along their intended route. She reported that it was a normal run through Philadelphia. Everything was normal up through Philadelphia. And she said she could hear the transmission of the locomotive engineers. The conductors carry radios, and they are frequently talking to and listening to the locomotive engineer. So she could hear the transmissions from the locomotive engineer. She reported that approximately 3 to 4 minutes after departing Philadelphia, she said she heard the engineer talking to a SEPTA engineer. She recalled that the SEPTA engineer had reported to the train dispatcher that he had either been hit by a rock or shot at, and that the SEPTA engineer said that he had a broken windshield and he placed his train into emergency stop. She also believed that she heard the engineer say something about, she also believed that she heard her engineer say something about his train being struck by something. This is her recollection, and certainly we're going to be conducting further investigation of this comment. Our investigation has not independently confirmed this information, but we have seen damage to the left-hand lower portion of the Amtrak windshield that we have asked the FBI to come in and look at for us. We oftentimes rely on the FBI for their technical expertise in such areas, and they will be there tonight looking at this particular damage to the Amtrak locomotive windshield. Of course, when the engine went through the impact, the windshield was shattered, but there's particular damage there that we want them to look at for us. We've secured the track image recorder, by the way, from the SEPTA train to see what we can learn from that. Now, moving forward, right after she recalled hearing this conversation between the engineer and her engineer and SEPTA engineer, she said that she felt rumbling and her train leaned over and her car went over on its side. She said they were not able to self-evacuate, and they waited for the emergency responders to get them out. She said she had about 15 passengers in her car. We asked what her working relationship was with her locomotive engineer. She said that she had worked with him a good bit and said that he was great to work with. She said he was always offering to help her with her job. Now let's move to the assistant conductor number 2. He's 35 years old. He was hired by Amtrak in May of last year, just a few days before the accident. He had celebrated his 1-year anniversary with Amtrak. He was in the 7th passenger car. That, of course, is the last passenger car, and he reported having about 40 people in his car. Up to the accident, he reported no problems other than some radio problems with his portable radio. He said that sporadically he could hear, but not sure that some of his transmissions were going out. At the point that we're describing at the location of the accident, he said he felt shaking, then 2 major impacts. He said that interior seats disconnected, and he attempted to contact the Amtrak dispatch center, but does not recall receiving a response. He assisted with the evacuation of injured passengers until he was instructed by emergency responders to go seek medical attention on his own. He said he had not worked much with the Amtrak engineer for the accident trip, but he did say that he was happy with the engineer and described the engineer as being very professional. So what we've just described is the information that allowed us to delay the press conference so that we could report that information to you. We've got some other investigative activities that we'll fill you in on what's been going on. We've mentioned through the week a 3D laser scanner. We have done a 3D laser scanning of the locomotive interior and exterior. We've scanned an exemplar passenger car so that we can compare the exemplar passenger car to the damaged cars. And we've also documented interior safety features in all cars. We'll continue. We've continued the testing of the signals and the signal circuitry. Basically, as the tracks are being rebuilt, our signal specialists are going along to check the continuity of the signal circuitry. Over the weekend, we plan to reassemble the train set as much as we can to put it back together, connect the brake lines, and conduct a brake test, and that will take several days. Over the course of the last
All right, you've been listening to an NTSb news conference updating us on the investigation. The headline here this afternoon is that the engineer of that Amtrak train has been interviewed by NTSb investigators. And what we're hearing from this news conference is that he seemed confident about the controls, the operations of the train. He reported no illness and he was not tired. We also learned that some of his fellow employees, also assigned on that train, were interviewed. He was described as professional and great to work with. However, one thing that stood out to me, Maurice, was he said that when the train made impact, some of the seats was dislodged,
right,
which tells you how great and forceful that impact was.
Yeah, also the FBI is in on this because one of the conductors reported possibly hearing on the radio that something may have hit the windshield of the front car of the train. So more on that as we continue tonight on the news.